My mother said I could never compare to her favorite son, so I inherited everything and cut them both out of the will. You ever spend your whole life being told you're second best? Yeah, that was me. From the moment I was born, it was clear I was just the spare, the backup, the one who's supposed to be grateful for whatever scraps were left behind. And the star of the show? That was my older brother, Caleb. Caleb was the golden boy, the chosen one. He had that smooth, charming swagger that made people trust him way too fast and regret it way too late. He smiled, they melted. He lied, they forgave. He failed, they blamed someone else. Meanwhile, I was the reliable one, the invisible one, the fallback. My name's Nathan. I'm 38 now, and for most of my life, I tried to convince myself that being the quiet one, the steady one, was a kind of strength. But in our family, silence was just another excuse for everyone to forget you existed. It wasn't just favoritism. It was religion. My mother, Linda, worshipped Caleb. If he stole from her purse, she said he needed the money. If I misplaced a charger, I was called careless and selfish. If he wrecked his car drunk at 22, she said boys make mistakes. When I graduated college with honors, she missed the ceremony because Caleb was in town for the weekend. That's not an exaggeration. That's just a Tuesday. Our dad, Martin, was the only reason I stuck around. He wasn't loud, but he noticed things. Quiet things. Like the time he showed up to my first job interview with a clean suit bag because he figured I'd forget to iron. Or the way he always called to check on me after holidays. The ones where Mom acted like I was the help and Caleb was royalty. He'd just say, "You good, Nate?" And I'd say, "Yeah." And we'd both know that meant no. But also, thanks. When Dad got sick, pancreatic cancer, sudden and vicious, it all changed. Or maybe it just got sharper, clearer. I was the one who moved back in. I took unpaid leave from work. Cooked. Cleaned. Made sure the morphine was dosed right. The hospice nurse had coffee. The insurance paperwork didn't get lost in the mountain of grief. Caleb? He flew in twice. Once to argue with the doctors about experimental options he read about on Reddit. Once to stand by the hospital bed for a photo that he posted with a caption about cherishing every moment. I didn't say anything. I never do. The night before Dad died, he pulled me in close. He could barely talk, but his eyes were sharp, focused. He whispered, "I changed the will. You'll understand when it's time. Take care of the house." The house. The business. The accounts. It didn't hit me until the funeral. We're sitting in the front pew. Mom's dabbing her eyes with a tissue she's used more times than I can count. Caleb is posing like a politician, arms around relatives, soaking in every sympathetic glance. Afterward, the lawyer reads the will. It's private, just us, 1 week later. I'm expecting drama, maybe some tension. But what I get? Silence. Then rage. Dad left everything to me. The house. The family business. The estate. Even the antique watch that Caleb always claimed he'd inherit. Mom loses it. She doesn't scream. That's not her style. She goes cold. Sharp. Her voice like glass. How dare he undermine this family like that? I sit there, hands folded. He made his choice. He was manipulated. You filled his head with lies. Caleb was supposed to take over. That's how it's always been. Caleb doesn't even look surprised. Just annoyed. Like someone spilled coffee on his shirt. You don't even know how to run a business, Nate. This is a joke. I let them talk. Let them spit their venom. Let them burn down whatever illusion of peace was left. Then I said one thing. You treated me like I didn't matter. Now, I don't owe you anything. Mom's eyes go wide. Caleb starts to laugh. Dry, mean, sharp. You think you're some big shot now? Come on. You'll come crawling back. You always do. But I didn't. Because I'd already made the final decision. I rewrote my own will. And this time, their names weren't on it. Not Caleb's. Not hers. Because for once in my life, I was done being the second son. And this time, I was the one holding the pen. They didn't speak to me for 3 months. No calls. No emails. Just radio silence. I thought maybe it would feel like a punishment. That cold shoulder from the people I'd tried to please my whole life. But instead, it felt like peace. I kept the house. Moved in officially. Packed up Dad's suits and donated them to a veteran's shelter just like he asked. I hung his Navy photo in the hallway, right where the light hits in the afternoon. The business, our family's hardware supply, didn't collapse like Caleb swore it would. It actually grew. New contracts. Steady profits. I hired 2 more people. Raise the base pay. Dad would have liked that. I even started fixing things around the property. The rusted gutter. The leaky hose bib. The tree that always scratched Mom's car because she insisted on parking under it even though the driveway was wide open. She used to call me lazy when I didn't do yard work. Turns out, I was just never asked. Then one day, I got a letter. No return address. Just my name in sharp cursive. It was from Mom. One page. Not handwritten. Typed. Like a business memo. Nathan, I hope this finds you in a reflective frame of mind. It has been some time since your father's passing, and I trust you are beginning to understand the weight of your decisions. Family is not just blood. It is obligation, tradition, legacy. You have disrupted the natural order by holding on to what was never meant for you. Caleb has accepted this injustice with grace, though it has caused him great distress. He is struggling financially. I believe it is time you set things right. Please consider transferring the business back to Caleb, as was always intended. Your father's lapse in judgment at the end does not reflect his true wishes. I await your apology. Linda. My jaw locked. My pulse throbbed. Apology? Transfer the business? Was never meant for you. I didn't respond. I didn't scream. I didn't write some scathing reply or call her to finally air decades of hurt. I just took the letter, lit a match, watched it burn over the kitchen sink. And the next morning, I started writing down everything. The childhood stories, the lies, the birthdays she skipped, the times Caleb stole from me and she laughed, the time she grounded me for a month because Caleb cried and said I hit him when he was the one who pushed me down the stairs. I wrote it all because sometimes the only way to get free of the past is to name it. And once I had the whole thing down, I realized something. This wasn't a story of revenge. It was a story of inheritance. Not money, but truth. And I wasn't going to bury it just to keep them comfortable. 3 months turned into 6. And still, nothing from either of them. But then came the voicemail. Hey Nate, it's Caleb. Listen, we should talk. I know things got weird, but Mom's not doing great. She's been depressed. Barely eating. She misses you. I do too. Call me back, all right? The audacity. The same guy who said I'd come crawling back. The same guy who laughed in my face when I inherited everything. And now, he's calling like we're just estranged cousins who had a silly fight over Christmas lights? I didn't call him back, but I watched. I watched their moves. I heard from mutuals, family friends, even the woman who runs the diner where Mom gets her daily breakfast when she's trying to be seen in town. They were struggling. Caleb had invested in some tech startup that imploded. He lost a good chunk of his savings and apparently tried borrowing against Mom's mortgage to cover it. She said no. And for once, I almost respected her. Almost. Because then I got another letter. This one was handwritten. Nathan, it's not too late to fix this. We're family. Mistakes were made, but what matters is moving forward. I'm willing to forgive the past. I hope you are too. Let's meet. I'll cook your favorite pot roast with thyme, just like when you were little. Sunday night. 6 p.m. Love. Mom. I stared at that line. Just like when you were little. When I was little, I once got food poisoning from her pot roast. She forgot to check the meat. Caleb got the fresh cut. I got the gray edges. That was her love. I didn't go. Sunday night came and went. I grilled a steak for myself and drank the wine Dad had been saving for his retirement. He never made it. So I toasted to him. And then Monday morning, she showed up at the shop. I was elbow deep in inventory paperwork, still wearing my thermal hoodie, when I saw her reflection in the glass door. Hair too done for a casual visit. Lipstick too dark. And those eyes, steely, calculating. Nathan, she said, stepping inside like she owned the place. Mom. I nodded, not moving from behind the counter. She looked around, lips pursed. This place looks clean. It's a business, not a confession booth. You didn't answer my letter. I didn't need to. She sighed, the kind of dramatic breath she used when she was about to pivot the conversation to guilt. I was hurt, Nathan. We all were. No, I said. You were surprised. Not hurt. Caleb was inconvenienced. Not betrayed. I'm the only one who ever got hurt. She bristled. You don't mean that. No? Let's recap. You ignored me for 30 years. Treated me like a placeholder. And now, suddenly, when the money in the house and the legacy aren't in Caleb's name, you miss me? That's not fair. Neither was growing up in a house where I had to earn basic decency. Her face went stiff. That frozen expression that always meant one thing. She wasn't going to get what she wanted. I came here to build a bridge. Then maybe you should have started before you burned the last one down. She looked at me like I was speaking another language. Like I'd grown a spine she didn't remember ordering. And that's when she said it. Soft, deliberate. You're being cruel, Nathan. This bitterness, it's not who you are. I laughed. Not loud. Just enough. You never knew who I was, Mom. You only knew who you needed me to be. Quiet, loyal, invisible. And now that I'm not, suddenly I'm bitter? No, I'm just finally being seen. She turned, walked out without another word. And I stood there, watching the door swing closed, not feeling guilt. Not even relief. Just done. Finally, truly done. And that's when I realized, sometimes the only way to heal is to stop pretending the wound was ever your fault. Even if your own mother never sees the scar. The thing about closure? It doesn't come with a bang. Sometimes it's just the sound of silence. Long, steady, unremarkable. And for weeks, that's all I had. No more visits. No more letters. No more voicemails pretending we were still some kind of family. The shop kept growing. A regional lumber yard reached out, wanted a partner. Said they liked the way I ran things. Ethical. Efficient. Calm. Words no one had ever used to describe me growing up, at least not out loud. I took the deal. Hired 2 more full-time employees. Started thinking maybe I'd expand. Maybe Dad was right. Maybe this place really could be more than just a dusty inheritance. Maybe it was legacy, earned. Then, the local paper ran a story. Second son, first in line. How Nathan Wells turned a family store into a community anchor. There was a photo. Me, standing in front of the old sign, arms crossed, slight smile. The kind of smile you make when you've carried too much for too long, and you finally feel the weight shift. Caleb saw it. Of course he did. He showed up 2 days later. Waltzed in like he owned the place. Aviators, designer jeans, like a guy still auditioning for a role he lost years ago. Customers in the store paused. The tension? Thick. Well, he said. Look at you. Mr. Community. Can I help you with something? I asked flat. Thought I'd come congratulate my baby brother. Big time now, huh? Paper says you're some kind of hero. I didn't answer. Just waited. He leaned on the counter like he used to lean on my nerves. You know, he said, dropping his voice, I could still help you. We make a good team. You do the spreadsheets. I do the networking. You mean you do the bragging and bleeding the books dry? He stiffened. Just for a second. I'm serious. I've got ideas. Plans. This place could be national. Franchises. I got a guy who. You had your shot, Caleb. You burned through every bridge. He smirked. Dad would have wanted us to work together. No. Dad wanted me to stop cleaning up after you. That landed. He straightened. Dropped the smile. You think you're better than me now? No, I said calm. I've always been better. You just never saw it because you were too busy stealing the spotlight. He laughed, bitter. You really think you're going to keep this going without us? You think you're family now? There is no family. Exactly. He left after that. No final word. No grand exit. Just stormed out, knocking over a display rack as he went. Didn't look back. And when the door shut, a customer near the nails aisle clapped. Just once. A slow, quiet clap. I chuckled, nodded, then went back to work. That night, I pulled out the journal again. The one where I'd written down all the stories, all the betrayals, the truths. I opened to a new page. And I wrote. He tried to shame me for healing. But the truth is, I wasn't bitter. I was busy building. And this time, I was building something that couldn't be stolen. Not by guilt. Not by legacy. And not by blood. 3 weeks later, I got the summons. Caleb was suing me. Unjust enrichment. The paperwork read. Manipulative influence over a dying parent. He wanted a share of the estate. Half of the business. Retroactive compensation for familial labor. It would have been laughable if it hadn't hit like a punch to the ribs. I sat in my office with the envelope in my lap for a full hour before opening it. It was surreal, seeing my brother's name, my brother, trying to rip apart the one good thing I'd built from the rubble. My lawyer, an old friend of Dad's, took one look and shook his head. It's desperation, he said. There's no case here. He's bluffing. But it'll still drag you through months of noise. And noise it was. Suddenly, I was getting anonymous calls again. Old high school acquaintances texting. Hey, just heard some family drama. Hope you're okay. A local blogger ran a little blurb. Brothers battle over hardware empire. Empire? It was a glorified lumber shed with a fresh coat of paint. Mom never called, but I know she was behind it. I could feel her fingerprints all over the phrasing in the court complaint. Words like duty and betrayal. Too scripted for Caleb's usual recklessness. I didn't react publicly, but I did what I always do. I prepared. I pulled receipts, financials, journal entries, emails, photos, every hospital report, every hospice invoice I paid while Caleb was on a beach somewhere taking selfies with strangers and captioning them with fake life advice. And I called the one person who'd always told me the truth, my Aunt Meredith, Dad's sister. She was sharp, kind, and famously allergic to drama. But when I explained what was happening, she said something that stuck with me. Nathan, the thing about leeches is they don't stop until they've drained you dry. You don't owe them your blood just because they're your blood. She offered to testify. So did two of Dad's old friends. The hospice nurse even said she'd write a statement. Apparently, she remembered how Caleb forgot her name twice and asked if she could grab him a soda like she was the help. The whole thing lit a fire under me. I wasn't just defending a business. I was defending my father's trust, my own sanity, my story. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one keeping the peace. I was preparing for war. Because when someone tries to drag your name through the mud, you don't roll in it with them. You stand up, you speak clearly, and you let the truth do the swinging. The court date was set for mid-April. In the weeks leading up, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. A smear campaign, a surprise witness, maybe even another letter from Mom. Dramatic, cruel, or desperate. But instead, everything went quiet again. Too quiet. I'd learned by now that silence wasn't peace. It was plotting. So I kept prepping. My lawyer, Dan, built our case like a fortress. Documented everything. The timeline of Dad's illness, Caleb's absences, financial transfers, the video Dad recorded before he got too weak to speak. A private message for the probate attorney where he said, plainly, Nathan will take care of the business. I trust him. No one else. That video, it hit like thunder. Even Dan teared up. The day of the hearing, I wore Dad's old cufflinks. Not out of sentimentality, out of strategy. Caleb always noticed those. He hated them. The courthouse was packed more than I expected. Family drama draws a crowd. There were cousins I hadn't seen in years, looking uncomfortable in press shirts and church shoes. Mom was there too. Front row. Black dress. Pearls. Mourning the reputation of the son she failed to control. Caleb swaggered in like it was his Oscar moment. Grinned at the reporters. Winked at a woman sitting near the back. And then, when he took the stand, he performed. My brother was always jealous. Always quiet. Always scheming. My dad, God rest his soul, was vulnerable at the end. He didn't know what he was signing. He even cried. One perfect tear. Maybe rehearsed in the mirror. Then it was my turn. I didn't speak like a lawyer. I spoke like a man who'd lived in the shadows long enough to know their weight. I wasn't the favorite. I wasn't the loud one. I wasn't even invited to half the family photos growing up. But I was the one who stayed. The one who held Dad's hand when he couldn't breathe. The one who fed him, changed him, talked to him when he couldn't respond. And the one who listened. He made his wishes clear, not just in a will, but in every act of trust during those final months. You don't earn inheritance through charm. You earn it through presence. The courtroom stayed quiet. The judge nodded, wrote something down, and Mom, for the first time in my life, she looked at me, not through me. The ruling came 2 days later. Case dismissed. Full ownership affirmed. Caleb ordered to pay court fees. He didn't show up for the verdict. But later that night, someone egged the store. Broke a window. Petty, juvenile, like a teenage tantrum wearing a man's face. We cleaned it up by morning. My employees didn't even flinch. That's when I knew. This place wasn't just mine anymore. It was ours. And no court battle, no bitter brother, no ghost of a mother's disapproval was going to change that. Because the truth had stood its ground. And so had I. You know what no one tells you about winning? It doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like silence. Like waking up the day after the storm and realizing everything's still standing, but you're too tired to celebrate. That was me, the week after the verdict. The store ran normal hours. The employees showed up early. The lights came on, shelves got stocked, customers cracked jokes like nothing had ever happened. Like the whole courthouse saga was just a bad dream I walked out of. But inside, I felt hollow. Not because I regretted any of it. Not because I wished things had gone differently. but because I finally understood what real endings felt like. They weren't fireworks. They were funerals. I stopped checking my phone for messages that never came. I deleted Caleb's number. Blocked Mom's. Not out of anger, but because I knew that any future conversations would just reopen wounds that were finally closing. One morning, I stood outside the shop before opening. The sun was just cresting the edge of the hardware sign. Same light I used to ride my bike under when I was 8, hoping Dad would let me carry the keys. Back then, I thought keys meant power. Now, I know they mean responsibility. The town started treating me differently, too. Like I mattered. Old Mr. Hargrove from the feed store stopped by just to shake my hand and say, "Your dad would be proud." A teenager came in asking if he could intern after school. And one afternoon, Aunt Meredith dropped off a photo. It was a picture of me and Dad from years ago. I was maybe 12. We were standing in front of the shop, same spot where that paper had taken my photo. Only in this one, I wasn't smiling. I was watching him. Watching the way he held the door open for an old lady. The way he wiped grease off his hands before shaking someone's. The way he nodded to every neighbor like they all mattered. And I saw it clearly for the first time. That's where I learned how to lead. Not from speeches, but from gestures. From staying. From listening. From cleaning up without being asked. That night, I went home and poured a drink. Sat on the porch Dad built with his own hands. Looked out at the street I used to dream about escaping. And I didn't feel trapped anymore. I felt rooted. Then my phone buzzed. Blocked number. Voicemail. I listened, just in case. It was Mom. "Nathan," she said, voice raw. "Your brother's left the country. Said he needed a reset. I just wanted you to know." Pause. "I suppose you got what you wanted." Then she hung up. No apology. No peace offering. Just that one last swipe. That last attempt to pin the weight on me. But I didn't feel it. Not this time. Because I wasn't carrying her guilt anymore. I'd finally put it down. And the quiet that followed? It didn't feel like defeat. It felt like freedom. It took almost a year before I felt normal again. Not the old normal. Not the kind where I was the quiet son in the corner of the family photo, cropped out when the frame got too small. A new normal. The kind you build, brick by brick, with your own hands. The shop thrived. We opened a second location 10 miles out. I trained a young guy named Jamal to run day-to-day. Smart, steady, reminded me of myself, only braver. I told him not to wait 30 years to speak up. And me? I finally took a vacation. Not some wild trip to Paris or a spiritual trek in the Himalayas. Just a cabin. Lakefront. Quiet. I brought one book. One fishing rod. And Dad's old journal. Yeah, turns out he kept one. Aunt Meredith found it in a locked drawer in the garage and gave it to me on what would have been his 70th birthday. Said, "It's yours now. You earned it." It wasn't poetic. Wasn't full of revelations or secret codes. Just pages and pages of observations. Notes about inventory. How he liked his coffee. Quotes he'd scribble from movies he watched late at night when no one else was awake. But in between those mundane lines, little flashes of truth. Nathan stayed up late tonight. Helped me reorganize the bolts. Didn't even ask. Good kid. Linda snapped at him again. He didn't react. Stronger than she knows. Caleb came by. Late. Asked for money. Again. Said it was a loan. I know better. Page after page. The kind of love that never got spoken out loud, but lived in quiet margins. And in the final entry, scrawled in shaky pen. Whatever happens, Nate's the one. He won't say much. But he shows up. Always has. Always will. I stared at that line for hours. Because for all the years I thought I was invisible, I was actually being seen by the only man whose opinion ever mattered. After the cabin, I came back changed. Not because I found peace. Because I realized I made it. Brick by brick. Conversation by conversation. Boundary by boundary. The old pain didn't vanish. But it didn't control me anymore. And maybe that's the best we get. Not revenge. Not justice. But freedom. The kind you build when no one believes you can. The kind you pass on, quietly, to those who come next. Just like he did for me. Last Thanksgiving, I cooked. I'd never done that before. It was just a handful of people, Aunt Meredith, Jamal, and his girlfriend, 2 neighbors who didn't have anywhere else to go. We pulled a folding table out onto the back porch, covered it with mismatched linens, and sat there under string lights as the sky turned orange. It wasn't picture perfect. The turkey was a little dry. The wine ran out early. Somebody forgot to bring forks. But it was ours. No one fought. No one stormed off. And no one made me feel like I had to earn my seat at the table. And sometime between the second slice of pie and Jamal's terrible attempt at a toast, it hit me. This was the family I chose. Not the one I was born into. Not the one that labeled me lesser and locked the door. But the one that grew from quiet kindness. From work. From presence. From truth. I still get the occasional update through the grapevine. Caleb's in South America somewhere, trying to reinvent himself. Mom sold her house. Moved into a condo near the coast. Still tells people I was always difficult. I don't correct her. I don't call. Not out of spite. Out of peace. There's a line in Dad's journal I keep coming back to. One he wrote after some fight I can't even remember. Sometimes, distance is the only kindness some relationships deserve. He was right. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Some doors stay closed. And some sons stop apologizing for choosing themselves. So this year, when I carved the turkey and looked around at that table, not of perfect people, but of present ones, I felt something deep, quiet, and certain. Not pride, not triumph, but gratitude. Because after a lifetime of being second place, I finally came first. And this time, it had nothing to do with the will. It was mine. Built. Earned. Lived. There's something strange about legacy. Everyone talks about what you leave behind. But no one talks about what you carry forward. This spring, I found a box in the attic I'd never seen before. Marked only with a Sharpie. For Nate. Someday. Inside were old photos. Dad as a boy. Mom before she got hard. Caleb and I on tricycles. Back when we were just kids, not rivals. Before the roles calcified. At the bottom was a sealed envelope. Yellowed at the edges. I opened it, careful like it might break. It was a letter from Dad. Nate, if you're reading this, it means you stayed. Not just in the house. In the fight. In the work. I know things haven't been fair. I know your mother's way of loving never looked like love. I know your brother took more than he gave. But I also know who you are. You're the one who kept the lights on. Who showed up when the rest of us looked away. That's not flashy. It's not always seen. But it's everything. I left you the business because I knew you'd protect it. But I left you this letter because I want you to protect yourself. Don't spend your life proving you were worth it. You already were. And you always will be. Dad. I sat on the floor, letter shaking in my hands. Breath caught somewhere between a sob and a smile. Because sometimes, the love we wait our whole lives to hear comes too late to say back. But it still lands. It still heals. That night, I framed the letter. Hung it next to the register, just behind the counter. Not to show off, but to remind myself, every single day, that I wasn't chosen last. I was chosen right. And that kind of inheritance? It's bigger than money. It's freedom. It's clarity. It's peace. And finally, after everything, it's mine.